Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Women in Business 2024, hosted by BIPC Devon. We are privileged today to be joined by Jayne Murtha, who's worked with us several times before in the past and is running one of two talks today. If you're kind enough to keep your cameras on, the session is being recorded, but if you'd like to leave your questions to the end, Jayne will have a little bit of time within the hour to answer some questions. So without further ado, I shall hand you on to Jayne and start sharing slides.
Good.
Thank you, Jayne.
Thank you, Richard, for that welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, Abby and Becky, and anyone else that introduces that follows on and joins us later. As Richard said, this is being recorded so that you can later on revisit the course page and get it so you can slow it down and take some notes. So if you just sort of turn up with your ears and just try to take in what I'm saying, you'll get the most benefit. So today I'm doing a talk on becoming more confident using your self-compassion practices. I've been a coach for many years. I trained as a counsellor and I've worked for the NHS. And that's given me a huge amount of experience of actually noticing that we're all the same. We all struggle with different things in our lives. And I've got a lot of experience really of helping people to become their full potential, to be more proficient by doing certain practices. Because when we beat ourselves up, we don't really get the best out of ourselves. You know, that inner critic takes over. So we're going to go through a few practices today to help you to get the best out of your life. So could I have the first slide, please, Richard? So this is a quote that I really enjoy. It says, if you don't make the time to work on creating the life you want, eventually you're going to be forced to spend time dealing with a life that you don't want. And what that's basically to me says, you know, we get one life, our heart beats every day. How do we want to spend that life? Are we going to use our experiences to share our gold? Or are we going to hide our gold? Because I believe everybody has something that they bring, which is very unique, that they can only bring in their way. So, for instance, if you were a nurse, you might be very good at dressing wounds. But, you know, it's more than just dressing wounds. You need the right bedside manner, you know, to relax your patient. So we all bring things in our own way. You know, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And I believe that every experience we have gives us a life lesson. And to learn from those lessons, we have to treat not only ourselves with compassion, but other people. And that means that we have to build our confidence. We learn to trust in our ability. You know, sometimes we get things right, some things we don't. You know, we get things wrong, but we still are learning all the time. So, you know, what have you decided that you want to do with your life? Let's have a look at the next slide, please, Richard, and look at the reality of what our life looks like. Can you identify with feeling overwhelmed and overstretched? I know I certainly can. You know, we're always wanting to do our best, and we sometimes forget ourselves in the process, and we push ourselves to, you know, great lengths to sort of fit in. You know, we live in a society where there is so much information. You know, we are distracted constantly by not only what's going on outside in the world, but what's going on, how we internalize, how we make sense of the world. And, you know, we confuse ourselves. You know, look at that poor woman who's trying to concentrate on a laptop for work, and she's got the children in the background bouncing on the bed. I mean, I'm sure if you're a woman in business, a busy mum, you can identify with that. And what do? We tend to then say, oh, okay, kids, go and watch TV, give them sweets, and overcompensate just because we're trying to get some time for ourselves. There's Superwoman. She's put her feet at the end of the day in a warm bath of soapy bubbles, you know, some self-care, thank goodness. But, you know, that's usually because she spent a whole day, you know, bending over backwards for other people, putting their needs first. What about her needs? So really, this is about your relationship, not with other people, but your relationship to yourself, because that's the person you're going to spend the longest amount of time with for the rest of your life. So I believe, and I hope you believe, it's worth investing in yourself. And, you know, believing that you need some time for you to recharge your batteries. And, you know, that poor woman there at the computer working till late last night, trying to finish her talk for the women in business, because she'd left it a little bit late because she had a busy day yesterday, you know, doing the final touches, trying to do things perfectly. You know, how many times do we, you know, we push ourselves, and, you know, sometimes enough is just enough. And you've just got to let go and relax and say, okay, this is an 8 out of 10 that I can give this today. And that is better than trying to reach for perfect, which is actually always elusive. It's always just out of our reach, isn't it? And then finally, the person in the bottom, which is that angry voice, that inner critic, that person that's always saying, come on, you can do more, or this is not enough, or, you know, how can I do more? How can I fit in more? You know, we have a longing to belong, and we use our different masks of the people pleaser. I don't know if you've heard of the people pleaser, but that's when, you know, we're trying to be superhuman in order to get praise and validation from the outside world. And actually, compassion is about giving praise to ourselves for our self-value, for our self-esteem, for our self-worth. So if we can go to the next slide, you know, what this puts us into is this fight, flight, freeze. When we've got too much going on in our head, we magnify it. Look at that big shadow running behind us. That is our fear. Now, our fear is our ego. It's how we see ourselves out in the world and how we want to look to other people. But our fear is what other people think about us. Are they judging us? Are they comparing us? Well, to be perfectly honest, yes, because don't we all do it? But how much control do we have over that? Well, we don't. We have to face uncertainty. We have to face that fear. But we can also know that the ego about how do I look? You know, is my hair out of place? Am I saying the right things? What are people thinking? Actually, people are only thinking about what you're saying. They might notice your hair or anything, but they're not going to remember that tomorrow. But you put that spotlight on yourself and you magnify it. And that stops you showing up for who you are. You kind of shrink back. I'm not enough. But what if we were to face our fears and talk to that inner critic? Because basically that's what it is, the inner critic, the internal voice that tells us that we're not enough. What if we are to tame it? What are we to talk to it and say, look, I know you're trying to protect me, but you've got it all out of proportion. You know, you need to get more perspective on this. So you're kind of talking to yourself in a kinder way, because, you know, basically being a people pleaser, being a perfectionist, being an overthinker actually holds you back. They're all forms of imposter syndrome, because you're not really being yourself. you're just putting these different masks on. And the reason that we do that is it's a case of survival, that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Not many of you might have heard of fawn, but fawning is, trying to appease people. How often do you say to your children, I'll do that in a minute if you're good? You want your children's love. You want your parents' love. And, you're frightened if you put your needs first, that somehow you're going to be rejected. You spend too much time thinking about the what ifs. That's the fear of the future. All those different scenarios you play in your head. What if this happens? What if that's... And it stops you. It makes you procrastinate. It shrinks your world. So to get confidence, we have to find little ways, small steps of stepping out of our comfort zone, which is a safe place, but we don't grow. So, it's looking at small ways, identifying small ways of how we can gently take those masks off and be more authentic, more loving towards ourselves, not abusing ourselves, not shouting at ourselves. So, can I have the next slide, please, Richard? Yeah. So this is what happens when we don't face our fears. We hold on to them. They're more damaging. They're more thinking distorted thoughts of, if I do this in the future, this might happen, or looking back to the past saying, well, it didn't work last time. Well, you've got to give yourself permission. This is sometimes something like, what do we hold on to? We might hold on to a resentment about something, about someone. Say, I was talking to a client the other day, and somebody, a very good friend, had said she would buy her sofa off her. And she said £400, and the person gave her £200. And she's chased them for a year for the rest of the money. And she's felt more and more resentful. And we were talking it through, and letting it go is probably better. She said, I've let go of the relationship. I feel I can't trust that person anymore. So it's an outside job, learning to let go of that person, your disappointment perhaps in their behavior, the disappointment that you allowed them to treat you like that. So, it's like you're having angry thoughts towards somebody, and you don't actually tell them, but it drives you crazy. It makes you feel upset with the injustice of it all. Why do I have to bring this up again? Why can't they just give me the money? You're hurt. Your feelings are hurt. And it shouldn't have happened. But perhaps you'll learn from that instance, when you let it go, when you can allow yourself to be free. It's not the burden. You don't have to carry it anymore. And you can say to yourself, well, I've learned something. I've learned to be more discerning. Perhaps, in future, if something repeats, this happens again to me, I will make sure I get the money first. So, this is what happens. You can flip it. You can, then when you've let go, praise yourself for saying, I've let that go now. I'm not spinning energy on that. Okay, so if we can have the next slide, please. So this is another favorite quote by Abraham Maslow. One can choose to go backwards to safety, which is comfort zone, or forward to growth. Growth must be chosen again and again, and fear must be overcome again and again. So this is basically accepting yourself that life is hard. Life is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. Life is impermanent. So, we've got to get on with it. I was at a party at the weekend, a 60th birthday party, And this friend of mine, who was 60, said she's always been afraid of flying. And she said she has decided now that she's 60, she's not sure how much longer she's going to be able to do things. I mean, she's very fit. She doesn't look her age. But she suddenly thought, my son lives in Hong Kong. I'd love to visit him more. You know, he comes over here, but, you know, she would like to visit him, see what his life is like out there. So she set herself up with, she's going to fly to Amsterdam first. So it's a short flight, but it'll help her to get used to it. So it's a stepping stone to get over that fear and to have more confidence and in her ability to challenge that fear. You know, where's the evidence? You know, she could possibly enjoy it, to open up her world and go and see her son in Hong Kong. So, you know, it just shows you that if you can break it down into a small step, you can gain more confidence, and you're doing it in a kinder way. Next slide, please. So this is the first tool I'm going to share with you. So I call this the 7 stages. So we are the thinker of our thoughts. So a thought originates in our head. But because we have the same thoughts over and over again, we believe we are our thoughts. But actually, critical thinking is learning that you are the generator of your thoughts. So if that's so, it must be true that you can change your thoughts. Now, when we have thoughts over and over again, they fire up different synapses in our brains. It's like igniting a match. And the more thought we have, it ignites our emotions. If you think of emotions, of energy in motion, they're the fuel, and they're fueled by the thoughts. So if you keep telling yourself something about the world or about yourself, and you don't actually examine it and know whether it's true, it's become a habitual thought, a habit. It's subconscious. You know, think about when you've learned to drive a car or ride a bicycle. At first, it's really hard, isn't it? Because you're thinking of mirror, signal, maneuver. And it seems like, oh, there's too much in my head. But the more you practice it, the more it becomes part of behavior, part of your action, of knowingness of how to drive a car or ride a bike. And it gives you more freedom in the world. But we have some thoughts that aren't very helpful. So some thoughts are inspiring and we do good actions from them. But some thoughts, if we don't challenge them, some of them actually act against us. We react. They've gone so much into our subconscious that we actually, you know, see a dog and say we've been bitten in the past by a dog. All dogs then become dangerous. You know, it's that ego protection again. So if we have thoughts and emotions, if we can learn to master our thoughts, remember a thought is just a thought. And it's just like, if you can try and visualize it like busy motorway traffic or clouds, they will pass. The emotions, an emotion is fired up by the thought, but the actual thought only lasts 90 seconds, the emotion of that thought. But what we do is we add more thoughts to it and we fuel the fire. So we get enraged or we get very happy, or, you know, because we're having more and more of those kind of thoughts. So that creates tension within us. Sometimes it's good tension, happy tension. Sometimes it's negative, it's stress. And it stops us from doing things. We go into that panic, that fight, that flight. But if we can just hold that emotion, name it. Now, a lot of us have forgotten how to name our feelings and emotions. Name it, claim it, and say, okay, it's all right to feel angry in this situation. It's all right to feel upset. My feelings have been hurt. Talk to that emotion, be kinder to it, and let it pass. Because if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results, the same outcomes, the same experience. And that then makes that thought, I'm not good enough, or I'm clever, more fixed, more of a core belief in yourself. So we need to learn to interrupt the program when we have the thoughts that aren't helping us towards where we want to be. And, break the habit, the bad habits, and create better habits. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, please. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. So how else can we do this? Well, it's about having a better relationship with ourselves. And we can only do that is when we slow down. Life is lived in the fast life lane, on a bullet train, on a hamster wheel. We actually have to tell ourselves to slow down. We actually have to care about ourselves enough to slow down. So I've put some lovely pictures here of walking in the woods, feeling the sunshine, smelling the smells of winter or summer. And instead of living in this head that sits on our shoulders, actually experience through our senses, our bodies, through our hearing the crunchy leaves as we walk across them, feeling the sunlight on our face, getting out of our heads and into our feelings. And our feelings are in our body. They're in our, in your heart. We do actually have brain sensors in our brains, but we also have intelligent sensors around our heart, because you can even feel it in your body when you look at someone you love. You feel this warmth in your heart. You feel all warm inside. You feel safe when you're with people that you love. The sea might be a place that you love because the lapping of the waves relaxes you. Or perhaps your dream world is, your imagination gives you a lot of value. When you just cloud watch or people watch, or, it's learning to not just be in your head, but also breathing. This is what keeps us alive, our heart beating and breathing air and oxygen. And so when we're good to ourselves, when we find time every day, I mean, just before I jumped on, Richard and I were having a little chat, and, he's been running around doing a lot of work, being in the car, and his gym, he hasn't been able to get to the gym. Now, he was tired in a mental, physical way from driving. And he didn't have enough time to do his self-care practice of going to the gym. So the gym actually energizes us. I can see Richard nodding now. And, I do Qigong every morning, but the last couple of mornings I've missed it. Now, a couple of mornings you can go without it, but you soon start to miss it because your body has needs as much as your mind. We're not just in our head. A walk by the beach actually clears our head. So, daily practices, if you can think of daily practices, I know you're busy, women, and you might only have 5 or 10 minutes here or there, but it is worth it because it makes you more productive when you're feeding not just the needs of the mind and helping people in the outside world, but it feeds your needs on the inside. It keeps you healthy. It might be something like going to bed early, having a bath, going to bed early, time just for you to be alone with your thoughts, to think about your day, to reflect. Reflection is a process. It's really, really important. Otherwise, life just happens to us. And like the Kevin Nago quote at the beginning, we want life to happen through us. So we are the drivers of our lives, not the passengers. You don't suddenly wash up at 50 thinking, oh, what have I done with my life? You know, find it now. Don't wait to be perfect. Bloom where you are now. I learned that the other day in my restorative yoga class. You know, the teacher was saying, you know, bloom where you are now. And I thought it was such an important phrase. We're always waiting until we're perfect enough. So these daily practices, if you put the next slide on, please, Richard, what it does, it gives us a chemical reward. So if you think of your brain firing off different hormones, it has a chemical reaction within the body. So when we complete a task, we get a dopamine hit. Now, there's good and bad. You know, dopamine completing a task is good, but something like wasting hours trying to get likes on one of the social media sites, that is dopamine overload, and you don't need that. So, but if you can think of practices that you can do every day, and you know, some of these keep you alive anyway, eating food, you know, that keeps you alive. So some of these things you're already doing, and that causes dopamine, which is a reward chemical. Look at oxytocin. Playing with the dog if you've got animals. Hugging your family. If you haven't got family, hug yourself, because that will still trigger the oxytocin. You know, touch is healing. Touch is important. Serotonin, going out in the sunshine, walking in nature. Endorphin, you know, laughter exercise. Watch some comedy. Dark chocolate, you know, everything in moderation, of course. We're always worrying about our weight, but, you know, think of balance. Think, what can I do that's balanced? And if I can have the next slide, please, Richard. This is balance. Different areas of your life. So we need something physical every day. So that can be eating, sleeping. And by the way, rest is not a reward. Rest is part of your health. Sleep is so important. When we're sleep deprived, we've all been there. We've had children or worries, you know, stresses, and we've laid awake all night. Well, you feel pants the next day, don't you? You don't function as well. So sleep, take as a priority. See that as a priority, that sleep and rest, you don't have to earn. You deserve it. That is compassion. That is self-compassion, is I deserve rest. You deserve connection with other people. You know, join a club, go out for a coffee, but also respect yourself that, you know, gossip doesn't do you any good. It just makes you feel bad. You know, agreeing to something that you don't really want to agree to. You come away from that conversation feeling horrible about yourself. So next time, think either you don't comment, you know, use silence, or say sorry. Well, you don't even have to say sorry, just say, I don't feel that way, I have a different opinion. You know, just give yourself a little boost by saying what you truly believe. Just remove that mask, that people pleaser, because it's your truth. You're not trying to offend anybody. It's your truth. Financial. Now that's a good one. We all need to be better at our finances. You know, thinking of your tax return. Think about it earlier. You know, put something by each month, or keep a good record of things. I know there are lots of things on here that I already work on, but I can introduce into my life because I know it will help me function better. So next slide, please. So the daily practice. So this is another daily practice. I don't always, to be truthful, do it every day, but journaling is a really good way of being accountable to yourself. Because when you love yourself and you want more confidence, you are more accountable. You don't break your promises to yourself. So with a journal, you can write things down. When you write things down, it's your safe place. if you like. It's a safe place to begin to understand what you truly feel inside. You can write out things that have happened in your day, things that you think that are troubling you. And there's something about writing longhand that it gives space for your brain to relax a little bit. Because when we hold everything in our head, what happens is we go down all these different rabbit holes. We think of all the what ifs, the fears again. They tend to encroach. Whereas if you write it on the page, you can actually say, well, this is what I said, this is what I thought, this is what they said, this is what the situation is. And you might start to see repeating scenarios. So there's something to learn here. There's something about your growth. There's something that you might be missing, that when you write it down, you get more clarity and you start to think of different options and different things pop into your head. I mean, I personally work when I'm writing up my notes after a client. I write it all longhand. And as I write down, things will pop into my head and I can put that in the margin about what I think's going on, what I could possibly help with. And it just helps you. It's like thinking aloud, but just planning it on the page. And so instead of being in a survival mode, you actually feel you're driving and you actually start to thrive because you start to feel safe. All these practices make you feel better about yourself. And when you feel better about yourself, you do better. Well, that's how I found it. And that's what I found with my clients as well. You know, they can actually give themselves time to pause and reflect, to see that progress is made through a process, that it's not overnight. We often think of instant gratification. We want it now, but actually we have to learn to build it. So confidence is like a muscle that you build by putting things into different steps, taking your time, praising yourself for the little wins. You don't even have to share them with other people. You can just share them with the page. But it is quite nice to have friends that you know support you and have your back, to talk about things you're working on, to actually, it actually increases not just your confidence, your productivity, because you'll start to think in new ways. And I just think it's a great benefit. And I've actually got to a point where my main journal gets a bit messy, and I like to be quite neat. So I started being creative, and I've got a creative journal now where I write my poems down or my dreams down, or something that interests me. I've got an astrology diary now, because I've got an interest in astrology. So it actually opens up your world to not only be more, but to do more. Someone bought me my stepdaughter bought me an art course evening, and it was something that I completely out of my comfort zone. But I went along and I was actually able to say, this is my first time, I've never done this before. And there were about 3 or 4 other people that hadn't done it either. So immediately there's that shared humanity of, oh, we're all newbies. Let's see what we can do. So you take that judge, that criticism, that comparing off yourself. You're not assuming that everyone knows better than you. Of course, we all know different things. This is the great excitement about the melting pot of being human. Everybody has a different take on things because it's based on their different experiences. So, that's a journal that you can keep and do each day. So the next one, please, Richard. This is the habit tracker. So if you find what I've been talking about, which is really the daily practices to make you feel good, this is kind of honing it down. If that feels a bit too much for you, this is a great exercise to, choose just 3 things perhaps to start working on, that you're already working on. So you're building up that practice, that journaling, going to bed early, paying attention to your relationships. It's not just about connecting to ourselves, but connecting to others in a healthy way. And so you've got those 3 top things that you perhaps are already doing. And then other things, when stresses come in, as they always do, it's like today we're waiting for some furniture to turn up and they're giving us a 3-hour slot. And I'm just thinking, oh no, I just hope they don't get in touch with us while I'm on air. But that's life. You can't control everything. But it's finding time to some of these things drop off. So, you might, when you get busy, not have the time to sit down with your family. So, look at practices that you can piggyback off. So if you want to get fitter and you don't have the time, piggyback onto something like when you're brushing your teeth, do some squats. Simple enough. When you're boiling the kettle, get a couple of tins and do some arm rep, something like that. So you're piggyback it on, or set your alarm to remind yourself that at this time of day you're going to go for a walk. So you're keeping the promises to yourself. You're not letting yourself down. And then the bottom row is cutting out things that actually drag your energy, either physically, mentally, or emotionally. So, you might need to look at not cutting out alcohol, but just reducing it, or switching off the phone or putting it on silent. Because every time we are distracted, it takes us about 20 minutes to go back to what we were focusing on. So remember, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So you've only got a certain amount of energy for today. Be wise on how you spend it. And remember, worrying and stressing about the state of the world, you can't control the rest of the world. You can only control yourself. So you can do something that you might sign a petition, you might send money, but you can't solve the world's problems. But you can, by solving your own problems, that is helping in a kind of ripple effect, because you are connected to a certain amount of people, so like voting, you have a vote. So you can do things in small ways. Okay, next slide, please. I realize I've only got 8 minutes left. So this practice, this is really about self-compassion. So self-compassion is made up of 3 things. It's kindness to yourself. It's realizing that you are part of the human species and we all share common humanity. We all struggle sometimes. Often when we struggle, we isolate ourselves. We feel ashamed. We feel guilty. And we overreact instead of responding to ourselves in a kind way. And the third part of self-compassion is mindfulness. And that is, when you feel guilt and shame, embarrassment, it's painful, it's difficult, but we can over-identify with it. When we get anxious, we try and hide it. Well, we all have anxiety. And if we can say to ourselves in a compassionate voice, I have anxiety, but I'm not my anxiety. I have anger, but I'm not my anger. I have shame and embarrassment, but I'm not all shame and embarrassment. It might just be in one area. It might just be, we make a mountain out of embarrassment, of being seen, of making mistakes. But if we can accept and, just like I did with the art thing, just say, I've never done this before. It gives other people permission to say, oh, neither have I. And there's kind of a common sharing of, oh, that's all right then. It actually takes the heat off you. It takes the spotlight. You actually think it's all right if I don't do very well, because this is the first time I've ever done it. And it gives you an openness to try, just to try. Because I think the worst thing in the world is if we don't try, we'll never know. So that's sort of what compassion is. So it's relating to yourself with kindness. If you have a problem, rather than judging yourself on the problem and berating yourself and ruminating and going over and over and over it, treat yourself, talk to yourself with warmth and patience and say, do you know, Jayne, I know this is difficult for you. Actually give yourself some tenderness. Maybe someone's pointed something out about you, a flaw, and you've got, you've kind of retracted and gone inside yourself, and you might have, had a glass of wine too many and said something silly. Now, everyone else laughed, but inside you cringed. Now, is it worth going over that and beating yourself up the next day about it over and over? There's someone that loves themselves and is kind to themselves and say, oh, don't be silly. Somebody else does that. We all do that when we've lost control with a bit of alcohol, or we've blurt something out because we're nervous. So if we can accept that other people, it happens to other people, and if it happened to your friend, if it was your best friend, you would just say, oh, it doesn't matter. I thought that was really funny. So, you're your worst critic. So it's about acknowledging that we all hurt sometimes, but keeping our feelings in balance, not going overboard, not persecuting ourselves, not beating ourselves up. I'm sure you show empathy to other people. So this is turning that around and showing empathy to yourself, and, just becoming aware of the story you tell yourself about yourself. And actually, maybe that story needs to change. You're not a victim. You're a creator. You're a creator of your life. All those thoughts and feelings that go over and over, they make you you. So can we let go of this fear of what other people are thinking? Can we kind of see the bigger picture that we all are trying? We're all part of this human race, and can we come together more? I believe we can, and I know we can, and I see it every day in my work, and I see people grow and realize their potential. And I want that for myself too. And I want you to want it for yourself. So now we're going to go to, next slide, Richard. I've got one more. Well, I've got this slide here. The butterfly is beautiful only because the caterpillar was brave enough to accept the painful change. So this is what transformation is. It's giving caring for yourself. It's not looking for outer validation from other people, but looking for inner validation of praising yourself and saying, you did a good job, you're doing well, you're not quite there yet, but you will be. And when you graduate, or whatever it is you're working on, if it's studies or getting a job or building a business, pat yourself on the back and shine where you are. Let other people see you and enjoy it. Enjoy it. We only get one life, so enjoy it. So if you're interested, next slide, please. If you're interested, my husband and I run this company, Be Well and Thrive. I do individual coaching over the phone or in person. And if you would like to use my janestrawson@hotmail.com email, my husband wrote a life book, and that shows some of these tools that I've given you today, goes into more depth, and I will give you a PDF free copy if you email me. So thank you very much for listening. And now I'm going to hand over to you to ask any questions. Remember, it's being recorded, so, psychological safety here. Only say things that, you feel you can share. And over to you then.